Allegheny County Fire personnel. Be advised, we have received reports in the area of Gate City Boulevard and US 29 of a tornado on the ground. Again, all units be advised, we have a report of a tornado in the area of Gate City Boulevard and US 29.
I don't know the address, but I'm in there. And I think a tornado just came through here.
A tornado just came through here. A tornado just came through here. It just tore the whole house up.
It tore your house up?
Yes.
Okay, what's your address? You guys aren't trapped in the house, correct?
Yes, but the house is pretty much destroyed. Like, we got power lines and everything down over here.
It leveled down. It leveled Greensboro. Greensboro's on the ground.
That's when something blew by my windows in the back, and I said, "What in the world is that?" And then here come the train right behind it. I saw derbies, jump, everything's chairs, everything just flying in the air, gutters from somewhere I don't know.
You know, but we didn't notice it because everything that happened, and we were still in this stupid state of mind. But yeah, it moved his car from there to there.
Well, the tornado blew off the roof of the Keystone Freight. It flipped over a 25-inch trailer onto the fence. Like, the roof is off completely. Like, not everything is off, but the outside part, and then it's like it's raining down. It's raining. It's like the water is dripping so hard. It's just crazy, man. It's just crazy. I never experienced a tornado day in my life, and I'm a New Yorker. I was trying to get a hold of y'all when it first after it happened, but it was busy.
Over the course of its history, Greensboro had 2 tornadoes touch down, causing significant damage and altering the lives of many. The first was April 2nd, 1936, and the second was 82 years and 13 days later on April 15th, 2018. This is that story.
There have been several tragedies that struck Greensboro over the years. Smallpox epidemic in 1860. Greensboro tried to quarantine itself in December of that year. The penalty for disobeying that order was $50. The Charleston earthquake in 1886 affected Greensboro. In 1899, typhoid fever at the Women's College, now known as UNCG. March 1st and 2nd, 1927, 18 to 20 inches of snow fell in Greensboro. And polio hit Greensboro 3 times. In 1935, in 1944, and again in 1948. It was a full pandemic.
I remember going to Winston-Salem for a tornado that really ripped through Salem. Salem College had these, you know, the old Salem. There's a little town square there that had the most beautiful trees. Every one of them was leveled. That tornado, that was in, I think, 98. That was bad. Hurricane Hugo, I went to Charleston for that, but got back and found out that some of the worst damage was in Charlotte. So I had to go down there, and I remember interviewing a woman that spent days trapped in her bathroom as our house collapsed. So we've had a Stoneville tornado in up here, just up north of here, in 1998. So we've had some troubles, but there's nothing like 36.
Since October 24th, 1929, the United States has been in a Great Depression. The stock market losses reached $30 million. In 1933, the bank system collapsed. Unemployment across the country was 16.9%. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is president and running for re-election. Adolf Hitler signs a non-aggression pact with France and Belgium, but behind the scenes is recruiting children to teach them ideals of Nazism. John Christoph Blücher Elringus is governor of North Carolina. And Bruno Richard Hauptmann, the kidnapper and killer of the Lindbergh baby, is sentenced to death by electric chair. And on Thursday, April 2nd, 1936, at about 7:15 p.m., a tornado touched down in Greensboro, devastating the city from West Lee Street to South Elm Street, damaging $1 to $1.5 million worth, which devastated 289 buildings, 500 homes, killing 13 and injuring 144. It was a 4-mile-long trail of death, fire, and wreckage. It leapt houses, tore roofs, doors, chimneys, and even brick buildings.
Well, the 2018 will always be remembered. But the thing is now, back in '36, you didn't have TV stations. You had radio stations, but they didn't cover the news like they do now. We had the newspapers, and they covered it big time. The newspapers focused on it so long that it just became etched in your mind, the '36 tornado. 2018, there was huge coverage, as you expect, but there's so many weather-related catastrophes now that it's hard to keep them straight. Now, I think we'll be able to keep that one straight.
People didn't have the protection in a wooden frame building, and when you see pictures of the time, you see these wooden frame buildings that were just twisted and collapsed along Garl Street and McAdoo Street. So very few buildings survived totally unscathed, and people just didn't have warning.
It's a tenacious place, Greensboro. I mean, you know, we take a licking and keep on ticking, or whatever that old saying was. You know, we get beaten down every once in a while by storms and fires and that type of thing, but we keep going. We just, you know, pick it up and put it back together.
Wind-blown sketches of the jack straw wreckage and tornado blasted spots of the city. Tragic and grimly humorous irony, sickening destruction in the first tornado in Greensboro's history. Whole blocks of dwellings crushed and twisted, like an opera had under a steamroller, giant trees ripped from the earth, and splintered by the force of the wind. Huge branches shot like pointed shafts into roofs set askew. The heart-gripping sight of hollow-eyed people. The night's terror still written on their anguished faces. Their loved ones and homes whipped away by the wind's fury.
The United States is unique in that by far we experience more tornadoes than any place else on the planet in a particular geographic area, and that's called Tornado Alley, which stretches from the Gulf of Mexico up through Texas, Oklahoma, into the Dakotas, and then kind of doglegs to the right over into Ohio. That's where the vast majority of tornadoes occur. But we also while we aren't in Tornado Alley here, we do get a fair number of tornadoes because of some sort of special atmospheric and geographic circumstances.
Well, my community in my district, now that I'm the District 1 representative, is, according to the last numbers, about 68% African American. It's a majority minority district. It's about 58,000 people in District 1. And I don't know the exact number, but I would say probably 70% of them live in East Greensboro, which is on obviously the east side of town, right off of Highway 85. And so, but the poverty rate is high, unemployment is high.
The District 2 is made up of about 52,000 people. We are considered, you know, the two districts that are on the east side, we're the northeast. We go from Reedy Fork all the way down to East Market Street. Have different kinds of incomes, highly educated, then we have those that are not educated. We also have a group of Montagnards that are in District 2. The per capita income is at $17,000. So we have some on the high end, but then the average is pulled down because of those on the lower end. It's predominantly African American.
56's area had the lowest median household income of anywhere in the city. It is a extremely poor area. A lot of low income apartment housing, mostly rental homes. A lot of people own their home, but in that area, unless you go out in the county where people own their own home, a lot of that area right around the station is just low income.
I've been here, I'll be 50, I've been over here for 47 years.
Tell me about what this neighborhood is like for you.
Oh God, it's everything. This is where I grew up at. That's all I know. It's Phillips Avenue.
Tell me about the people here.
Our neighbors, some of the neighbors, we all grew up together. We were very close knit. Growing up, like the mothers and daughters stay, you know what I'm saying? The man here, his daughters lives here and everything. We've been here for 47 years and we've all been in these same houses forever.
Well, the neighborhood period, before all this, a period, you know, what I say, a community, you know, we don't let nothing go on. We pretty much know everybody. We pretty much know some of their friends and people. So afterwards, like my neighbors next door, I mean, we all, you know, tight. My neighbor, he just moved in, about a month, less than a month, when they doing the roof at, you know, but we was all cool, you know, we just all cool around here.
Till the storm come, it was a beautiful neighborhood. It was just beautiful. I mean, everyone tried to have pride in the yards and keep things nice on the. In fact, we won the city award for having the best street out here.
I mean, there's a lot of good people lived there, and a lot of people that worked hard and did what they were supposed to do.
Church going, law abiding families, you know, taking our kids to school, raising them, having a good time. We love going to the parks and hanging out.
But after that, you know, now, you know, we like, you know, we all, you know, caring about each other, you know, like, hey man, when we came out that day, we went to every house and made sure that everybody was okay, you know. Yeah, everybody was okay, you know, if they was at home. So, but the community, we always had a good community around here. We never had no problems around here, you know. They all help each other too, you know.
South of the railroad tracks, it was South Greensboro, and it was a large community. It extended on down to where I-40 now crosses, and even a little bit beyond that. So we lived in South Greensboro, and a lot of my friends lived in South Greensboro, which was on farther down Ashboro Street. That's the way we referred to it.
South End was a distinctly different part of Greensboro, and it was because of the railroad tracks. I mean, in the 1930s, we probably still had, I don't know, but probably 25 or 30 passenger trains and as many freight trains as we have now, maybe even more, because there were shorter freight trains and more of them back then. And it kept that crossing blocked. Now, by 36, we did have an underpass that went under Davie Street, still there. But because of the railroad, that underpass didn't come along until about 1927 when they built the new railroad station. But until then, people it's hard to get across the railroad tracks because there was a train blocking it. So that side of downtown, the south side of downtown, kind of developed its own personality.
Yeah, because you had a lot of people coming in and out, so you had a lot of hotels down there. You had, 4 or 5 hotels just right in the Hamburger Square area. And on the other side of the tracks, right there, one of the biggest, the Clegg Hotel, just beyond the tracks. But you know, in the South, the railroad tracks was always a delineation between, you lived on one side of the tracks or the other. I mean, I don't know if that was purely a Southern thing, but it definitely was a Southern thing.
It was convenient, it was good. There was 3 grocery stores, a barber shop, a beauty parlor, a fire station, and a service station within a block of my house. There was about 6 churches within 2 blocks. It was close to town. You could walk to downtown. But we didn't have a car because of the Depression. My father lost his business and everything he had.
But what we do have here in the Southeast is, and we all know this, is really humid air, right? Summertime's incredibly humid, right? So you need heat and humidity, and we get that from the Gulf of Mexico and from the Atlantic. And so that all kind of comes up, and then the key weather element is we call it a mid-latitude cyclone, a low-pressure area, right? You need a low, and then a cold front out of that head of that low, and that cold, dense air helps to create lifting motion in the atmosphere along with the humidity. It creates an unstable atmosphere. And you probably have noticed this, that typically in the summer around here, the days will start off for the most part sunny and the clouds will kind of build, just the kind of cute little fluffy cumulus clouds in the morning, the early afternoon. But then when conditions are right, the cumulus clouds will grow. They'll get really, really tall. And that's because of the heat and moisture. Warm air rises, and that cold air coming in behind the cold front kind of helps to lift everything up. And if you get some rotation, perfect conditions for the creation of severe thunderstorms, and then perhaps creating some tornadoes as well. So we're in a spot that's just prime for these sorts of weather systems.
Battalion 1, 10-4, testing Battalion 2. Battalion 2, 10-4, testing Battalion 3. Battalion 3, 10-4, testing Battalion 4. Battalion 4, 10-4, testing Battalion 5. Battalion 5, 10-4, test complete at 07:02 hours.
So when you coming in to the shift that day that there were at least projected storms, they were anticipating some storms. They didn't really know how strong. Our emergency management folks had kind of given us some heads up that we could expect something. We weren't exactly sure what. We had not increased staffing necessarily based on that. We just had our normal Sunday afternoon staffing.
But leading up to it, we had got some notifications earlier in the week to expect some severe weather.
Had more communication with emergency management and kind of had a better understanding that some hazardous or significant weather was probable.
I can remember it was very, very windy. And they were talking about a chance of storms and, all this cold front and everything. You heard it on the weather. But it was just a real humid, windy day for April.
Engine 30, Liberty Road at Bedrock Court. Liberty Road and Bedrock Court on a service call, be a tree down.
I remember it was very dark, but it wasn't nighttime yet. So I heard the radio go off for multiple calls, trees down, stuff like that.
Engine 22, 5309 Harvey Road, cross streets of Kinko and Jewel on electrical hazard.
Really, there's nothing you can do to plan for a tornado because you don't know exactly where it's going to hit. We've actually had in-services with the National Weather Service, and even they can only sometimes have minutes heads up. I mean, tornadoes are not predictable. It's not like a hurricane or other types of storms where you can kind of see a path. You can see they can see conditions coming together, but it's got to be that perfect scenario.
Attention all city and county personnel, be advised the entire county will now be operating in the storm plan until further notice. Again, all city and county fire personnel, be advised we will be operating in the storm plan until further notice. Start your communications.
And then shortly after that, we heard about the tornado coming through at 5 o'clock. And I said, no way. I said, that stuff happens Oklahoma, Texas.
It's almost like white noise because a lot of times you'll hear it and hear it and hear it to the point where you don't respect it as much as you would think you'd like to. And even if you knew one was coming today and at a particular time, I don't know how your reactions would be if you knew it was coming.
My driver at the time, Jonathan Wyrick, came out of his room and ran down the hallway and said he could hear a train, which, I kind of took it for what it was worth, and so we all went out on the bay floor, and it was absolutely pouring down rain outside. And within a few seconds, I looked out and it was raining upside down, so hard that we couldn't see the houses across the street. And the wind picked up and you could hear the rumbling, the building started shaking. And I guess that was at the time that it was passing behind us, about a block behind us.
All city and county fire personnel, be advised we have received reports in the area of Gate City Boulevard and US 29 of a tornado on the ground. Again, all units be advised we have a report of a tornado in the area of Gate City Boulevard and US 29.
Midnight, outside of Station 50, and it was just eerie. And then we got hit for a call.
Well, man, we was inside the house and we just heard pecking on the window. And I had a friend of mine that was here, and he said, well, it's getting ready to rain again. I said, no, man. I look out the window, I'm like, that look like hell, you know. And as soon as I said that word hell, it's like somebody flushing a toilet. It just...
Wow, the sky was dark. The winds were beating against the glass.
A tornado just came through. It's ripped out part of my neighbor roof. It's the power lines and trees down everywhere on this street.
Is anybody injured?
We don't know. We're about to go check on my neighbor.
But it took the roof off?
Yes, it took the back of his roof off.
It was pretty intense to start with. Just all these getting bombarded basically with calls that we were so overloaded here that we do have a backup. It's like it automatically rolls over and calls go to the High Point Communication Center. So they were getting our overflow of calls that we were not able to handle in a certain amount of time, so they were entering calls for us. So not only was all the positions in here taking calls and putting them in, there was a whole nother center also taking calls and putting calls in. So that's, it's pretty intense, and that adds a little to the confusion because they're not responsible for the day-to-day operations here. They don't do things the same way we do them.
Like this whole street is ripped apart.
And I believe my call was 3221 probably the same.
Please, oh my God. Anybody check out?
Are you at that location now?
Yes, we are in the house.
Okay. No. Is anyone trapped?
I was all right. No, we're okay. It's just a mess. There's people running up the street checking on people. I don't know.
Okay, I've got the fire department on the way, okay? Just don't try to attempt to rescue any trapped people. If it's safe to do so, make sure no one re-enters the area. Okay, turn off all equipment except the ventilation, okay?
Okay, it looked like a tree fell on a car and somebody in the car.
Okay, we've got the fire department on the way, okay?
As our calls started coming in, I began getting messages from units saying, I think I just saw a tornado. I just saw what I thought was a funnel cloud. Can you advise?
Yeah, all that wind and rain, it just like oof. So they was up front, up here, and the house goes way back in the back, and that's where I was sitting at. By the time I got up here, my wife, she was looking at me like, what happened? I said, well, I think it's a tornado just hit.
I had been over to one of my girlfriend's house to eat dinner, and when I came home, I was getting out of my car, and I heard a sound. And I looked up, and the sky was looking different. And I said, this sounds like a tornado, because I've always heard a tornado sounded like a train. And that's exactly what it sounded like.
I saw derbies, junk, everything, chairs, everything just flying in the air, gutters from somewhere, I don't know where they came from, and just everything. And then when the train come, that's when the roof start flapping and going on.
Engine 4, 2105 East Florida Street, tree on a house. Car 12.
Okay.
Do you want to continue with these fire alarms due to these other calls?
Appears to be urgent.
It looks like we're getting slammed. We got a confined space call now on Avalon Road. Let me go ahead and get this one dispatched.
In a single location that all our other trucks were on the other side of town. So it was very quick that we were running out of resources on the east side. Pretty much everything east of 29, all our trucks were on calls already. So we had to start pulling some folks in. My initial inclination was to go to the scene. And so I went downstairs, got in the car. I got really two choices in this particular case. I could go to the scene and see if I could help out, which I probably would be very little help to my battalion chiefs. Or I could go to Guilford Metro and start seeing what they're are preparing to dispatch, read the notes on it, and make a decision based on what is written on the notes, whether I want to send trucks to that particular address or not. So I go downstairs, it's raining pretty heavily, and I start pulling out of the parking lot, and I say, what am I doing? And I come back upstairs and start directing resources from right here, because I have everything besides the ability to sit there and talk one-on-one with the dispatcher if I went to Guilford Metro. And I could do by phone or ring down or by radio what I could do up there, and probably save me the 15 minutes it'd take in that storm to drive down Guilford Metro and make a difference at that point.
Just a few minutes after 7, hail formed. A noise that sounded like a freight train was heard from the west. Nothing was seen quite at first, but slowly the formed twister appeared from the west, gaining speed. It seemed to be several hundred yards wide. It hovered just above the ground. Many folks of the street had no idea what was about to happen next.
Because, you know, that tornado began about where the Coliseum is now. And I remember interviewing a guy, and I wonder if it's true what he told me, but he said he was driving down Lee Street, coming towards downtown. He was in a convertible car, driving. I think he had some people with him. And he looked behind him, and he saw the funnel coming behind him. And he stepped on the gas to try to outrun it. Now, I guess he did outrun it because I interviewed him 60 years later or something, 40 or 50 years later, I don't know. But I wonder if it was true. It was about 7:15 at night.
A little less. I was about 2 years and 8 months old. And I don't remember the tornado except that the house got dark. It was just like nighttime. And I was being carried, my family, I had 2 older sisters, but I was number 7 and 8. And all of them were around. So my 2 oldest sisters, one of them carried me and one carried my little brother who was just over a month old from window to window looking out to see what was going on. They didn't know it was a tornado, but they knew something was happening, and you could sense the panic of the way they were acting.
And he talked about Southside Hardware. Which that store went out of business probably 20 years ago, but it was a 3-story building, and after the tornado it was only a 2-story building, and it's still there. I forgot what's in there, Dudley Beauty Supply, and those are in that block now, but that was a 3-story building. The Bluebell plant, which is down at the end of the block, that was heavily damaged.
Now, I understand one of the buildings where Mellow Mushroom is now was a 2-story building, and at the top level was Lee Jeans, become Wrangler, their first real manufacturing plant, I believe was on that 2nd floor.
Mercilessly tearing through houses and brick buildings along Lewis Street and Lee Street. The twister leapt out of the southwestern skies with a horrifying roar and a terrifying suddenness. The funnel-shaped tip glowing like fire in light reflected. It came swirling, rushing, dipping to earth here and there as it swept on in an east-northeast course, leaving a trail of wreckage, fire, injury, and death in its wake. It was gone in the span of a few minutes, almost before anyone realized what was happening.
Yeah. When I was a kid, my grandfather, he talked about it all the time. He worked for a company, a little out of store. He managed a store downtown for Sands & Company, which was under contract to the railroad to where they could railroad people. There was a railroad yard downtown then, the Atlantic and Yadkin Railroad. And there are people work downtown. They come to this store and buy clothes, food, all sorts. That's the source of everything. But that's all he talked about. I think his store might have suffered some damage.
The first indication to the unaffected parts of the city that something had happened was when ambulance, fire, and police came rushing repeatedly down to the southern part of the city.
The ambulances were equipped with resuscitators, and the ambulance drivers had some very, very basic first aid training, but certainly nothing like the EMTs have today.
Fire sprung up behind the tornadoes that swept across the city from the southwest, dipping down at a number of points. Sections where the tornado struck were immediately thrown into darkness, as electric wires went down. A short time afterwards, the Duke Power Company cut off the current as a matter of precaution, and the entire city was thrown into darkness for several hours.
Well, my dad at that time was working for Haynes Funeral Home, which is now Haynes Lineberry, but at that time was Haynes Funeral Home. And he happened to be driving an ambulance when the tornado hit, or he was dispatched as an ambulance driver and went downtown to survey the damage, and a lot of people were injured. A lot of people were hurt because of debris and a number of other things. The story I remember most vividly was the fact that he told me this. Obviously, I wasn't born in those days, but he pulled up in the ambulance, and it was a big lake almost of water. And he pulled the ambulance up and opened the door and started to step out. And somebody, and I'm not sure where they were standing, but somebody hollered at him, "Get back, get back, get back." And as it turned out, there was a live electrical wire down inside that pool of water. And had he stepped out of the ambulance into that water, he would have been gone. So that was the most vivid story that he told me from that, other than just the fact of routine rescuing and the fact that a lot of people were injured and had to be helped. That was a very bad time.
Police, National Guardsmen, firemen, and senior Boy Scouts were rushed into the torn area, but were able to make little headway at first. They worked in darkness and in a downpour of rain. 26 people were hospitalized, and the whole city is in mourning over this tragedy. It was finally realized that 13 were dead and 500 homeless as a result, as the Red Cross workers continue to aid.
The low pressure area and the cold front that created this system actually started out in the Plain States, which is not atypical. This event and the weather system that created our eventual tornado was impacting the central U.S., the Plain States, on April 13. And the cold front and the low gradually moved east and brought the severe thunderstorms and tornadoes up to the Mid-South and then up into the sort of the Mid-Atlantic region. And so it had a long history, lots of severe weather over that 3-day period from April 13 through April 15. And so the National Weather Service was on top of this. They do an excellent job at forecasting these sorts of events, and they issued severe storm warnings and watches earlier that day and lasting on into the afternoon. So they were sort of ready for something like this to occur. The atmospheric conditions were just sort of perfect for this.
I remember that day very vividly. I was in a meeting on Meadowview, and it was around 5 o'clock, and got a phone call from the city manager at that time, Jim Westmoreland. And he said, "A tornado has hit your area." Well, I didn't really think much about it. I mean, we don't see many tornadoes over here.
I mean, it took up all that. So we didn't get no warning. We didn't get no, it didn't sound like, people were talking about, a train or something like that. No, we didn't get none of that. After it happened. Yeah, after it happened, when I came out the door where I'm standing at right now, me and my friend car was parked right here, right over here. But we didn't notice it, that it picked up the car and moved it back there. Because when it moved it back there, but when he went and had it, because he had a dents and stuff on the side, but when he went and had it, with the insurance stuff, it was over $9,000 worth of work. But we didn't notice it because everything that had happened, and we were still in this stupid state of mind. But yeah, it moved his car from there to there, you know.
Okay. I'm going to put you on 500 sites. I've got to report some people trapped in there. One guy in a wheelchair on oxygen may not be getting the oxygen that he needs right now.
Trees down were not immediate needs, but as they were reported, that's how they will drop into the queue at the dispatch center. So that dispatcher kind of picked through what he thought was a more important response. We don't like to sit there and say one thing's more important than another, but when you run out of resources, you got to kind of draw the line somewhere.
And started down McConnell Road. Well, when we got up to Banner Avenue, I could see telephone poles across McConnell Road. All the power lines were down, and I guess it still didn't dawn on me at the time what had happened. So I told my driver, I said, just take a right on Banner, go down, turn left on Everett, we'd cut across and get across to Gate City. Well, when we turned right on Banner, it's kind of up on a hill, you could see across, and you could see a lot of damage. There was roofs gone, some of the houses were gone.
56.
Go ahead.
Take this one. We got a report of a roof that fell in on a house, 405 Avalon. Actually, looks like it's going to be an apartment. 405 Avalon Road, apartment F.
We pulled up to an apartment complex. And in this apartment complex, it didn't really hit me that I saw a bunch of trees down, which, like I said, it was a storm. I mean, it was bad, raining pretty bad out, so trees down was totally normal. But what was not normal was when I looked up at the second story of this apartment complex, and I thought I was looking at the ceiling. And then I my vision kind of expanded, and I noticed that the roof was gone. I said, oh shoot, I'm not looking at the ceiling, I'm looking at the sky. These people lost their roof. I was like, that's when I knew it really happened. That's when I knew this tornado really touched down in Greensboro, and that's when I knew we had something real on our hands.
Couldn't make it to the call we were dispatched on, wanted him to, what did he want us to do? And he said, well, what have you got? And I said, we've got houses that are missing. We've got a lot of damage. There's roofs gone, houses collapsed, and so at that point, he just told us to stay there, do what we could, and he asked me, he said, what do you need? And I said, well, I'm sure we're going to need the USAR team, which is the Urban Search and Rescue team that's stationed at 5. I said, go ahead and just send us everything you got. I said, I need more companies, more people, because I knew at that point we were going to have to get out and walk. You couldn't drive through it. You couldn't do anything.
250.
250.
My AVL, can you dispatch some other units out here? We have several apartment complexes missing the roof, and we do have people still in apartments.
Okay, I'm sorry. I know you needed your location. What was the rest? It broke up.
We have several apartment complexes with their roofs missing. We still have people in we're still trying to make searches, but we still have people in.
Everything. I mean, it was just houses and trees and cars.
And this was around like Banner Avenue,
yeah.
Or like Banner Avenue and Apache Street.
Yeah, Apache. And once we got through that little thicket of trees, it opened up into this. I guess that was Apache and Banner, and it was just the houses that imploded on themselves. And I remember looking up, and there was this cell phone tower that literally, it looked like somebody took their hands, scrimped it down, and then bent it in half. And that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen, because it was this massive cell phone tower that it was just popsicle sticks.
I am on Phillips Avenue, Old Hickory. We have multiple trees down here. I can see one overturned vehicle. Sheriff's here. They said it just came in. Can't get to the main part of it. I have to go around.
Simple. Just make your way to those addresses on Neal County.
As a matter of fact, no, I was sitting on the couch and the alarm thing went off on the TV and it said take cover. So by that time I heard a big bang hit the door and it was my mama's chair. He hit the door. So I jumped up. When I jumped up, I looked out the door and I looked up and I was telling my brother, there it goes, there it goes. I seen it. I just actually seen debris flying in the tornado. It touched down in our neighbor's yard across the street. By then, when it touched down, I looked out the door and across the street here, this house here, I thought Jesus was coming. I was just seeing a big bolt of lightning and it split everything in this man's yard. And my brother just took and pushed me out the way and shut the door.
403, this is Medic 32. We can't get any further down Market due to some power lines. I'll check with fire real quick, see if they've had any resources check that area. Can you give me those numbers one more time?
Man, I'm telling you, it's just it was a trip.
403, just have all units approach from the south due to the travel path of the storm. Station locations, Greensboro, Station 53. Okay, I cleared that call over on Sykes. I'm over here at Wendover Sykes area. Where do you need me? All right, stand by right there. I'm going to let you meet up with some fire resources. We got a couple of calls on Sykes, Lord Jeff in that area.
So when I first pulled up, of course at that point I was just kind of focused on the task, what I would be doing at that point, and kind of the areas of responsibility. So it was kind of business mode at that point. But when I got out of the vehicle and kind of stood there, walked around a little bit, it was actually what I really remember is there was this very eerie kind of quietness. I think there was a lot of folks out walking around. There was a lot of power lines down, the trees were down, and houses were torn up. But a lot of the residents in that area, it was really quiet. I think most folks were just kind of walking around in disbelief. So it was, you would think you would hear a lot of, screaming and sirens and things like that, but it was actually really, like I said, it's like an eerie kind of quietness and calmness.
And I told them, I said, we're just going to have to get out and walk. I said, you got to watch these power lines. I said, I don't know what's live and what's not. And before it was all over with, it didn't matter. You were walking on them, crawling through them, because there was no other way to get around. We were just lucky none of them were live. But essentially what we did was started at Everett and Avalon and walked house to house. So we just basically walked those series of blocks, Avalon, Ardmore, and on down all the way to English Street till we got out of the bad damaged area.
A good, methodical way of addresses going down this street and verifying. We were kind of bouncing from address to address based on first party reports of people being trapped or injured. But getting to them was a challenge. It looked like a war zone.
F1 to 403. 403, go ahead, DS1. Dispatch is assigning me that call on Phillips Avenue. You want me to go ahead and respond? I just came over here with Squad 50. We got a bunch of trees on a bunch of houses over here.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. Also, I asked for 250 to come into town.
Simple. I believe they on the way to Cone Boulevard to assist Rescue 5, but if we can get them to clear, I'll get them to start towards Engine 7's call.
After that initial apartment call, some people had told us, they said, you have to go further this way. I couldn't tell you what direction we were going in. They said it's worse. I was like, worse? They said, yeah, it's worse. You got to keep walking. So we were walking through the woods. I remember climbing over trees and like just a bunch of trees down. We were walking almost through woods. And then I remember when like I came out to a clearing and there were no more trees. There was nothing at all. There were just houses. It looked like a scene out of a movie. There were just houses just completely obliterated. And then I could remember my captain was ahead of me, and I could hear him say over the radio, it was a little bit broken up, but I could hear him say over the radio, we have a victim. And I was like, oh shoot. And I walked over to him, and this guy, his house was collapsed around him. It was like it was almost like he was watching TV, and his house just collapsed around him. And my captain was trying to find an address to get an ambulance and more help there. And I was holding what we call C-spine. And C-spine is you're protecting the neck and head so that you're trying to cause less harm to this individual rather than moving it. The more you move it, the worse it's going to get. So I was holding C-spine on him in what felt like forever. And I talked to him. It just started raining. We talked to him, he wanted to go back to work. I said, man, I don't think you're going to work, man. You got to go to a hospital. And like I said, it felt like forever. I could remember nobody could get to us because there were power poles down and there were trees down and there were lines down. And I just heard, it was kind of weird because we were trying to get an ambulance there, but everyone was trying to find us and they couldn't find us. And so I heard an ambulance or a fire truck go by. And I was like, okay, cool, help's coming. It just kept going. And then like another one would come this way and it just kept going. And I was like, God, that's when it felt like forever. And eventually somebody figured out how to get an ambulance in there, and we had to get him down out of the house. I think we used a door to slide him down off of the house so we can get him off of this pile of rubble and into the ambulance.
Start the balance of Station 5. You saw 5 toward the east side to Car 1's AVL location.
Pibble, you want what's left at 5, or you find the USAR team?
Entire Station 5.
Okay.
Rescue 5, we're heading to Connell and Avalon for Car 12. What you have, brother?
If it did hit, I'm glad it hit on Sunday and not Monday when them kids were down at the school. You know, I don't even know if you even been down to the school yet.
When it came through on that Sunday, we have people working 24 hours a day. Obviously a larger group during the day in the 16 hours, but then we maintain a smaller group that is continuing the progress overnight. Our system is designed to where when you have a fault or a grounded situation on an energized line, of course it will trip it out. It will try to come back on, but if the fault is solid, then it will trip it out. And so most of those lines go out on their own, and then when we find that we may have situations that we need to de-energize other areas to make sure that it's safe for the public and our workers. We ended up about the second day into the storm, we had about 1,000 resources in East Greensboro, which generally we cover the Greensboro area in totality with our local resources, which is roughly about 100. To 120, counting our contractors and some of the underground crews. And so we brought resources from the rest of the triad zone, and we're able to really restore everyone's power that could receive power within four days.
And then it didn't last about, I bet you it wasn't 45 seconds, the most. And then when I went to see about my neighbors, I got some neighbors that's sick, and see if they were all right. Then I went to the very end house, a friend of mine, James Marsh, and his house was probably total loss.
Our neighborhood stuck together through this. This has been, right after this, people were coming in. My daughter called. She wanted to know were we okay, and we took a walk down here. She stays on the other side of town. And we took a walk down here. She's seen all the damage. She said, come on, Mama, go with me to the store. We went. Got about 5 loaves of bread, a couple packs of meat, bottled waters, sodas, chips, And we would start walking out and passing it out. And ever since then, everybody has been sticking together. It has been truly amazing how our neighborhood really came together.
Is there anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm just proud of our neighborhood. We really did stick together.
You know, Monday morning, the chief and the mayor and I were on the ground talking to people. The emergency services crews were still going through homes, you know, getting people out and working with residents. How is it possible that people were coming out of these homes? You know, I stood with a young man who said that was my cousin's home, and as we're looking at it, 3 walls are missing and the roof is missing. And there was a person that had been sitting in the middle of the house that walked away. And then I went 2 houses down, and there was a house literally that had been picked up off the foundation and moved several feet, and there were people in it.
I mean, all that stuff can get replaced, you know, and I know lives can, but, you know, I just hate that one person had passed, but, you know, with the, you know, all the volunteers and rescue of people, they were like, well, we're glad there's not a lot of loss of lives, you know. And, but I don't know what else more to say, man. It was just like a scary situation, man.
We have a need, we need help, and we got to get it done quickly. And it was bam, 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 and that's so cool. I mean, that is this whole thing so far. That has been this whole thing is we have a need, we need help, and let's get it done. And there's never been a hesitation from the community and multiple organizations.
We've had so many strangers come through just looking, you know. We had a lot of traffic. We don't usually have that kind of traffic through this area, but it's been a lot of traffic, day and night. And we had some houses people had broken into where they had abandoned their homes to go to hotels and different. A lot of people have been breaking into houses.
Because there's still a lot of damage. A lot of people, some people still not able to go in their homes. You got some that sleep in their homes when they shouldn't be. Or they just won't leave home. That's like she wouldn't. It was cold the first couple of nights. We ain't had no power. We was out of power for how many days, Mom? How many days were we out of power? 5. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. 5 days. We got power back Thursday evening. We were almost 5 days without power. It was cold in there. I couldn't get her to leave for nothing.
How'd y'all manage with that?
Well, blessings come. Our neighbor here, his girlfriend's boss found out we were out of power. He went and bought her a generator, a brand new generator. They ran a cord to our house. So, we were blessed.
I had gotten to know a lot of the people in that area. We'd see people at the grocery store. We'd see people on calls. We'd be out testing hydrants. No, I didn't grow up there. It's not my home neighborhood because I grew up out in the middle of nowhere. But you kind of become part of that neighborhood and all that, and you just knew that neighborhood would be changed pretty much forever. And it was sad to see. You know, it'd be just like if it happened in where I grew up. You know, in my little corner of the world got decimated like that. You know, you become part of a neighborhood. Whether people want to believe it or not, you do. And to see it torn up and the people's lives disrupted, it was a shock. You know, that's something that stuck with me for a long time.
One of the things that is a positive as we are rebuilding District 2, there'll be new homeowners, there'll be refabs, so houses will look better. So some of the communities and the streets are looking better, and we're still working on that.
It was just unbelievable. I would visit various churches, and I mean, there was so much activity there. Mount Zion, they had lines of people for donations. New Hope, I mean, they had lines. I mean, it was just really awesome the way we came together. during this horrible disaster.
Hard, but because the city came together so well, you know, like the habitats, the community housing solutions that came together and jumped in with the donations that were provided that assisted people to get their houses, you know, back so they were livable. So, but everybody doesn't have that. So I think that's what makes, you know, that's what makes Greensboro unique, the way we came together and very strongly, and, you know, the meetings we had every week and assessing rehab projects, and they're still ongoing. So here we are in 2020, we still have a group that meets specifically that's talking about repairs that are being done related to the tornado.
Absolutely necessary because of the mission of the church, because of our placement in this community, and because of who we have been in the history of Greensboro, that we had to be one of the churches to answer the call. And so we saw close to probably close to 8,000 to 10,000 individuals who were either came to our facility or we met them in the neighborhoods. Gifford County Board of Education did was they said, hey, students had to come, and so we actually began to converse with those who were in charge of the lunches and said, listen, some of these kids can't even make it out of their neighborhood. We have to take the food to them. So we began to create lines of cars that would literally truck their way through debris and fallen trees and fallen power lines and find pathways into these communities and begin to serve them. And so there are people who never saw this church, who never saw the inside of our lobby, who never saw all the grills laying out in the parking lot, but they felt the love of Christ. They felt the community coming to answer them. And I feel like as a result of that, we had a great opportunity to build and to rebuild not only the community, but the people in it.
Takeaways from this would include advanced warning for weather, other disasters, understanding that if we all band together that we're stronger, understanding that sometimes events like this precipitate change in faster ways and that we can be prepared for that.
It was a horrific event at that time, and of course most people don't remember it, it's forgotten, but I think they should remember the 13 people that were lost their lives and the damaged property, and it happened during the Depression. It was just a tough time all the way around.
We are not in control of the weather, and anything can happen, and I think we need to take seriously when we get a warning. People want to hold the weather forecasters to strict accountability, and it's not an exact science. I mean, things can change, the conditions can change, but I think it's very important for people to be aware of what can happen.
And remembering that our built environment around us really should reflect our history. And that's a good thing. We want to be able to read our city and to see the events that occurred in our architecture and in our built environment. It makes us a much more interesting place than a brand new city that is totally new and has no blemishes. The blemishes are what make us an interesting, fascinating city to live in that we can learn from.
I know as time passes, people sort of forget, but and I don't know how many people are still living that lived through that tornado.